The meh region, the man region. That didn't come out right.
What?
It's our favorite.
Wait for
time of the year. Here comes the panel. Here comes the bracket. Let's go. I live for those delays. There was only one this year, and it was Villanova. I live for the delay. Oh, so great.
That's what they do when I send them my tuition check.
Timing.
Celebrate.
All right, I said it. I'll commit to it here. We start with the man region because the man is Zion, and with Zion back, look at that pass. Duke, the overall 1 seed. So start with the wow that is Duke after winning the conference tournament. But also, let's think about this. Michigan State at 2. I wonder this every year with the Big Ten tournament, finishing up 15 minutes before the bracket comes out, and even more so considering how Michigan is grouped with Gonzaga, Michigan State with Duke. Committee chair Bernard Muir said, with that win 15 minutes before, Michigan State jumped Kentucky and Michigan as a stronger 2. Yet, bing, they're stuck with Duke. Tim Callis, just start me out with here. Did Michigan State get hosed?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no logic to that statement that he made, and it's very simple. If you're Michigan State and you win the Big Ten Conference and you win the Big Ten Conference Tournament and you beat Michigan 3 times and they deem that both you and Michigan deserve 2 seeds, that's fine. But give me an off-the-record conversation. Who do I not want to play in the Elite 8? Duke. Let Michigan play Duke. They're the team that never beat Michigan State. Let them figure it out. Just flip those 2 teams, and really just about everything else about the brackets would be fine. But it just shows they don't really care about these conference tournaments. There was no value in Michigan State beating Michigan yet.
Linton Yates?
Yeah, but I don't understand. Where do you want to put him? In a bracket with Gonzaga, who beat Duke with Zion? I'm not so sure that the road for Michigan State in that conference is that tough. I mean, look at the other teams there. LSU is a disaster at this point. We've seen what's going on with their coach, and Vatek's a good team. But sure, I don't think that this penalty is as bad as what people think is what I'm saying overall. Duke's a good team, but Duke averages a bunch of turnovers. It's not going to be as hard to beat them as people think, even though they deserve the seed. I think Michigan State's just fine.
Okay. Frank Isola, you want to weigh in here?
Yeah. Yeah, let's ask Tom Izzo, would you rather play Gonzaga or would you rather play Duke? He's going to pick the team out west. You know, going into the selection, they were saying that Michigan State was one of 7 teams under consideration for a #1 seed. So if they're one of 7, how did they technically get the 8th seed? Because we all know that Duke is a #1 overall team. I will say this about them. They're going to have a lot of people in the country rooting for Michigan State because they do play the Bradley brand in the first round. So go Michigan State.
All right, and how about you? That's a fire take for my Sola to start the day. How about you, Woody Page?
Well, they'd be better off playing Bradley Beal than Bradley Brand, I think, because what happened here to Michigan State, I don't know how in the world, Clinton, you say you can really kind of defend what went on here. Michigan State arguably could have been a #1 seed. They came out of what's arguably the best conference overall in the country, and so not only are they penalized for playing in a tough conference, but they're penalized because the committee was still making its decisions at halftime. Why didn't they go ahead and announce it at halftime based on what happened? I just think they got it all the way around. I'm going to be one of those cheering for the Spartans because I think that they were the ones more than anybody else in the tournament don't deserve what they ended up with. That's what
Yates, you can come back in, please.
I'm taking your advice, Woody, and looking at the schedule. It's not about the theoretical concept of the 2. It's about the teams that they have to face. I fully expect to see the Spartans here in D.C. for the regional final against Duke for
and
that.
Frank Isola.
And that's the big thing with Michigan State. They do have the 2 losses to Indiana. They did lose to Illinois. That was a big part of it. But to me, and to Tim's point, you're winning the regular season championship and the Big Ten Conference Tournament. Seems like you should get more than #2 in the same bracket.
Does any of this fall on the Big Ten for taking that time slot for their tournament championship game? Anybody want to make that argument? Woody, you can real quick.
Yeah, why not play on Saturday? There are other conferences that finish their conference tournament on Saturday. You had to play Sunday afternoon right up until the selection. We've seen this happen several times before. They need to rework their schedule.
Yeah, it's clear that the Saturday tournament championships benefited some teams, but the Sundays don't. And I think we've seen this in previous years. I want to talk about Duke now. Tim Callis-Shaw, biggest favorite in 5 years. They're 2-1. Is that overstating it, or after what you saw this weekend in the ACC tournament, understating it.
I think it's overstating it. I think Zion is the 2-1 favorite to be the MVP of the tournament, no matter how many games Duke plays. He's setting ACC records coming back from injury. But I still think it's a very beatable team for the obvious reason people have talked about. They can't shoot threes. And one night they're going to play somebody, and the threes aren't going to fall, and they're going to play a team that hangs around with them. They obviously have great talent, and they're capable of blowing out just about anybody, but they're capable of a really bad shooting night, and I think that makes them vulnerable.
Woody, how big of a favorite is Duke going into this tournament?
I'm taking them to go all the way, and I think that even though people are going to look for a bracket buster there and say, oh, let's take them out of the way, Zion coming back just showed exactly what he was worth. MVP again of the tournament, over 80 points, no freshman coming in has ever had that many points and rebounds in a tournament. With him, they're a totally different team. He made Trey Jones, if you looked at the tournament, a much better player than he was during his departure.
Isola?
Fully healthy, they've only lost one game this season. I think if you're CBS, if you're Turner, if you're a college basketball fan, those of us who love it, you love the fact that Zion Williamson is back and playing well. He is going to be the face of this tournament. But I would say this about Duke. When the last time they won the national championship with that young team of Jahlil Okafor and Jones and Justice Winslow, they did not have all the pressure on them. The pressure was on Kentucky because Kentucky went into the tournament undefeated. There's going to be a ton of pressure on this Duke team, and they're not a great shooting team.
That was the last team to be as big a favorite as Duke is this year. Clinton Yates on how big of a favorite Duke is going into this tournament.
I think they should be a huge favorite. I mean, when they've got everybody going, they're the most dominant team in the country. That's not even a question. But I mentioned this earlier, the turnovers. They averaged 13 a game. That's 180th in the country. And they had 18 in a game against Syracuse, which is what concerns me far more than their three-point shooting, quite frankly.
Let's look at the bracket real quick in the East, all right? Fun. Belmont got an at-large bid. And a lot of fun, a Patino versus Louisville as a Patino sues Louisville. Any underseeds or overseeds or upsets that you got circled right now, Clinton?
Terp's going down. Belmont, Turgeon's in a terrible situation. He's fighting for his job. I don't see Maryland making it.
You have Maryland going out early. Isola, how about you?
How about the Atlantic 10 champion St. Louis getting Virginia Tech in the first round? That's a potential.
You like St. Louis. They only made the tournament because they won their conference championship in the tournament. Paige, how about you?
Well, give me Liberty? No. Give me Mississippi State. I think it's an underrated team that's going to get all the way to the Duke game before losing.
All right,
Follow the Bulldogs.
Let's go thumbs up or thumbs down on the give me Liberty or give me... No, everybody's saying thumbs down. Here's a mute, Woody. Kalisha?
All I'm saying is Central Florida has a 7'6" player named Taco Fall. If Duke's shots aren't falling in the second game... crazy things could happen.
Okay, all right. So you're looking at Central Florida to win that 9-8 game, the big upset from Cal.
Got to win the 9-8.
And then maybe give Duke a challenge. We'll move on. UNC, the one in the Midwest, and this is their region. Kentucky as the 2. The tournament champions from the SEC. Auburn, the tournament champions from the Big 12, Iowa State. 31-win Houston, 20 straight winner Wofford, and oh, by the way, Kansas, who can look ahead to playing in Kansas City if they make it that far. I know it's Wofford. I was going for the joke with the woe. I blew it. It's all right. Did UNC get the bracket they need, the bracket they deserve? How much work do they have in front of them, Woody Page?
I think a lot, because to me, that is balanced. It's a very difficult bracket, and I see 6 teams that really could emerge from there. So I think, did they get the bracket they wanted? No, because overall they're going to look at it and say, we've got the toughest road to hoe.
Tim Kalisha?
I think they're fine to get through this first weekend and get to Kansas City. The problem then, do they want to play Kansas in Kansas City? That's not good. But if they don't, that probably means Kansas lost to Auburn. And Auburn is ridiculously hot after winning the SEC tournament. So that, plus all the stuff at the bottom of the bracket, Kentucky, Houston, even Seton Hall, a lot of talent down there.
Yates?
Yeah, this bracket has a lot of fun stories in addition to a lot of good teams. And let's not try to say that Houston is somehow underrated just because most of y'all haven't been paying attention. They've been in the top 10 for most of the season. They've only got 3 losses. Great story out of Calvin Sampson. That team is super strong, and I look to see them go.
Frank Isola.
And that's what's interesting, too, because they could end up with a really tough second-round matchup. I'm talking about Houston could play Iowa State in the round of 32. Right. One thing about Carolina, and this is a very difficult bracket for them, in the second round, they could potentially get Washington. And Washington is coached by Mike Hopkins, who for a long time was with Jim Boeheim up at Syracuse. They're going to play zone defense. You start playing zone, you only have 1 day to prepare for it. It is not easy. So watch out for that. Tim already has them going to Kansas City. Be careful.
With this region, I think you all agree this is the toughest region there is, right? The idea that the conference tournaments didn't matter, well, they did matter in this region because, like I said, you had Auburn and you had Iowa State winning their conference tournaments. Woody, of all the hot teams, anybody you really like, who do you have coming out of this region?
I like Pearl before Swine, and I'm going with Auburn because of the way they finished winning the SEC tournament, beating Tennessee in the final game. I mean, they only lost to Alabama over the last 2.5 months, Kentucky, pardon me. They only lost 1 SEC game down the stretch. I think they're still going to be hot.
Okay, they would potentially have to go through Kentucky in this region as well as UNC. Kalisha, how about you?
I don't think North Carolina is going to have to go through Kentucky because Kentucky may have to go through Seton Hall, a team that already beat them in Madison Square Garden earlier this year. That could be a big round 2 upset.
Wofford Seton Hall is one of those games that I'm circling here. Wofford, we saw play North Carolina in the first game of the season. That was a tight game. With about 10 minutes left, it was tied. Clinton Yates, anything in this region?
Not a bad game. I like Wofford, but I still think Houston is going to be a great team. The return of Kelvin Sampson to some level of glory is actually a story I'm interested in beyond basketball, just from a human perspective.
All right, good. So you just said nobody's going to be sleeping on them, and then you just profiled them as the masterful pick from Clinton.
Wake up, kiddos!
Right,
that's my point.
On this Midwest region, then we'll get out of here.
I just love the fact that John Calipari doesn't seem to be complaining yet about how tough the bracket is. But Tim is right. They get that Kentucky is going.
Have you been listening, Frank? That's the question. Let's put a cherry on top of this Calipari. Do we have Calipari with us right now? Let's hear from Calipari, please.
It was a setup. It was a setup.
To throw the toughest road. We're Kentucky. We've never had it easy, and I don't want it easy. Every year, it's like my boys, you're a murder's row. I was stunned we weren't set to Dayton Tuesday, and I didn't know there were so many ways to say you got screwed again. I'm told we have the toughest bracket. Is that true?
Thank you. Thank you. He's got full Larry David. That's a great Larry David impression.
You're welcome, Tony.
Around the Horn is brought to you by the Invitation to Lexus sales event, now through March 31st.
A1 again. Start me when that sounds familiar. Their 16 this year is both a Gardner and a Webb, who are running Bulldogs if there ever was one. Also with U of VA, the way under 500 in their conference, Oklahoma, and Oregon, who only got in because of their trail, and the on super delay, defending champions, Villanova Wild Cats, and Woody's Volunteers, Tennessee is the 2. Dro, how does this region look? How much pressure is on? How much confidence do you have in Virginia?
Well, a lot in the first round. I like Webb, but I'm not much into Gardner.
I knew you wouldn't be.
I think that they have some sneaky teams that they got to play. They're sneaky good. Purdue and, of course, Tennessee. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to get out of that bracket.
Tim Kalisha?
I think Virginia's good enough offensively this year. They can avoid any kind of long, dry spells, even at the pace they play, that kind of undid them last year. But there's a lot of teams they can run into trouble a lot of different ways. You mentioned Villanova and Cincinnati. That's a 6 seed and a 7 seed, 2 teams that are hot right now. I think they can cause.
You think they were underseeded? Both those teams won their conference tournament. You believe they?
Both of them.
Yeah,
both of them.
Clinton Yates, how about you?
I'm still confident in UVA. I'm sorry. I was confident in UVA last year. I'm not going to act like that was the norm just because they had an outstanding performance from UMBC. Look, it took an incredible performance from Duke in order to beat this UVA team. I still think they're the best team in that bracket. But yes, Cincinnati, massively underseeded with Mick Cronin in that spot.
Isola?
And I think if you're Virginia, after all the abuse you took nationally for losing to a 16 seed, it's almost like the committee threw you a bit of a bone here. That side of the bracket is not that difficult. No disrespect to those other teams, but Tennessee's a number 2. They've kind of struggled down the stretch. But I do agree with Tim. When you look at Villanova, they're the Big East champ. defending champs. They still have some players left over from that team. And you look where they are. They should be playing in the Sweet 16. There's a chance, Villanova, Virginia, to go to the final.
We just ended last segment with a Curb Your Enthusiasm. Did you hear I still there? No disrespect, but I'm about to disrespect everything in the bottom half of that region.
They're college kids.
You're all right, though, Frank, because the pace of play in this side of the bracket really almost fits Virginia. Anybody have one upset they want to circle in this one? Anybody have anteaters? Anybody have anybody else?
Yeah.
Who's Dominion? Old Dominion or New Dominion? Woody, I'm throwing you jokes here. Please, give me something. Any upsets?
No, I don't see any whatsoever.
All right, fine. Then we'll move on. Gonzaga got their one after a loss in their conference tournament, then drew Michigan, Texas Tech, Florida State, Nevada, who all had losses in their conference tournaments. Buffalo, everybody's circling Buffalo, it seems like. And Marquette, Murray State, check that one out. That's Marcus Howard and Ja Morant. Giddy up. Tim Calishow, what's the vibe of this region? What are the chances for some madness here?
I think there is a great chance for some madness here. You got Buffalo at 6, Nevada at 7. Nevada was ranked a lot higher than Nevada's ever normally ranked a lot of the season. And then, as you said, Ja Morant and Murray State at 12 could easily surprise Marquette and do some damage. I think Gonzaga's going to have its hands full, and I don't like their chances.
Glenn Yates?
Yeah, Buffalo's one of those teams that, although might be underrated to the average fan, listen, they were really good early in this season, were undefeated for a long stretch of time. A lot of experience on that squad. Although I think Gonzaga deserved this #1 seed, I don't think they will make it to the original final.
Frank Isola?
Gonzaga could end up, with 3 tough matchups after they get out of the first round, with Syracuse, and then they can end up with Florida State and Michigan. The game here that most people are paying attention to is Bobby Hurley, Chris Mullin, Arizona State, St. John's, 2 of the bigger basketball names in this area. The winner, the play-in game, gets Buffalo.
That's the game here? You mean the game in New York everybody's paying attention to, the play-in game. All right, Woody Page, how about you?
Well, I think I said to somebody earlier in the day that there are 4 or 5 teams in that bracket that I think can beat Gonzaga. So anytime they get any one of those teams, I think they're in real trouble. I don't see them getting out.
All right. Howard and Morant, Frank, I know you're tracking the NBA draft as well, but that's got to be Marquette Murray State, a game you're circling, right?
Absolutely. Marquette is a well-coached team, had some bad results late, but you look at Ja Morant, he's going to be a lottery pick. Maybe he can go on a run like Steph Curry went on with Davidson about a decade ago. This is going to be, his stage, his time to show everybody just how.
You've got Murray State in that matchup. Anybody else have a double-digit seed in this region?
Yes.
Clint, what do you got?
I've got Murray State again. If Ja Morant lived in a world in which Zion Williamson didn't exist, that guy would be a lot more famous for sure.
Last thing, after the horn here, overall grade for the committee here. I mean, it feels like people want to say teams are snubbed every year just because that's what they always do. Right. Was this year a year without snubs? That's the question I would ask. I would ask anybody, right? It seems like
UNC Greensboro. I wanted to see them.
All right, we've been horned. We're saying goodbye to Woody and Clinton here. Woody, just wrap it up in a bow. Who's your Final Four again? Just cut through the weeds here.
Florida State, I think, gets in this year. Duke, I think North Carolina gets there, and I like to.
Okay, and how about you, Clinton?
I got Duke, Michigan, Houston, and the Who's at UVA.
Wow, we're a lot of conviction in your picks, guys. Act like you know who's in the bracket. Let's go. Calishow, Isola, Showdown.
Not
next.
that easy.
Here we go. We are America. The moment has come. Around the Horn Bracket Challenge on ESPN.com. Face off with our panel, beat our panel, rub it in said panel's face. And one more reason to play. As is tradition, you win our group, you control Woody Page's blackboards for a day. Here's the showdown. Sixers, 130, Bucks, 125. Embiid and Giannis, this is why we play the game. 52-40. But Embiid getting the win. And the cross-up here, I mean, are you calling that a cross-up? It kind of looked like a giraffe rappelling. Also, Giannis and Simmons, this was a taunt fest. Tim Calishow, what'd you learn?
Well, Giannis won the taunt fest, but he didn't win the game. He got his 52 points. I wouldn't be that concerned if I'm the Bucks. The Sixers shot 47% on threes. If they're going to do that all the time, they're going to win, but they're not going to do that all the time.
Sixers may be peaking at the right time. Here's what I'm worried about with the Milwaukee Bucks. Malcolm Brogdon, who's so important to them on both ends of the court, foot injury, 6 to 8 weeks. He will not be back for the first round, maybe not the second round.
Yeah, that's a stunner. And
Bigger than losing the game.
Starter for the 1 seed who's having a 50-40-90 season. 2-point answer for my solo. We'll move on. On the all-time list of sentences, Mario Hezonja blocks LeBron to win the game is now one of them. This photo, by the way, just incredible. Also incredible that we're still doing LeBron sitting on the bench stories. Frank, was this a Mario moment? Was it a LeBron moment? What's the image you're looking at after this game?
Well, unlike Tim, I was actually at the game yesterday. To me, it was Hezonja blocking that shot. He's already had a dunk over Giannis, stepped over, and then you block LeBron's shot. But LeBron didn't play on Friday, didn't have any legs in the moment of truth. That has to be a little alarming.
I would have been at the game, but the owner thought I wrote something rude about him, so I wasn't allowed to attend the game. Let me just say, the thing I take away really isn't LeBron getting stuffed, which is kind of crazy, but that whole sitting away from his team, and I know it's just something he's doing, but it's a bad look for him, even if the team's out of it. Doesn't fit his narrative.
The shot block was the worst.
You were doing fine until the last. Oh, boy, going the wrong way. Frank Isola passes the Mario test and gets the FaceTime.
Bad rule.
Yeah.
Our very own Jeff Van Gundy said on Saturday during the telecast of Oklahoma City and the Warriors about how when players now rest, they call it load management. He said, let's call it what it is.